Hey everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap, the 6th to the 12th of October 2025. So, actually, not a huge amount of news coming out about just various updates and so on, but some kind of not great news. Mina the Hollower has been delayed past 31st of October, so it was going to be coming out Halloween. It kind of has a Halloween vibe to it. It was kind of like a fun top-down old school Zelda type game. Anyway, the entire crew has been working tirelessly and day and night to finish development for release on October 31st, but we're just not quite there yet. It's coming from Yacht Club Games. This isn't a major delay, it's just a stretch of time to apply some final polish and balancing to make the game truly shine. Little disappointing. Now, having said that, there are a million games out that I want to play, so having one of them delayed is not a big deal. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of wanted to play this one on Halloween. Anyway, hopefully it won't be delayed past, into 2026 or something like that. Maybe it'll be here before Christmas, something like that. Anyway, moving on. We have a couple of other updates. So Power Wash Simulator 2, I know, I'm probably the only person who's actually interested in this, but has a release date. It is soon-ish, I think, 23rd of October. This one's coming out. And you might think, what is there really a massive difference here? No, not really. Their rendering tech is a little bit better. You can really tell that, when things are wet, you can tell when like the mud has kind of come to sludge and stuff like that. So that's kind of like one of the bigger changes. Multiplayer is a bit better now. It doesn't quite have as bad performance hitches. And you have like a base you can kit out and stuff like that. So it is kind of just, in a lot of ways it's more of the same, and in some other ways they have kind of changed up and made things a little bit nicer. I imagine the original engine probably can't handle like very big maps anymore, because it did kind of chug on like very large maps. So hopefully that's something that has improved in the sequel. Anyway, you can find out on 23rd of October. There's a demo available now as well if you want to check that out. Skate Story, not to be confused with Skate, the EA thing. That's not being particularly well received. Skate Story is a little bit different. Skate Story is still skating. You're still doing tricks and what have you. It's still kind of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater in a lot of ways. But the difference here is you're in hell. You're a glass demon trying to escape hell, and you're going to escape hell by doing tricks. Don't think too hard about it. It's really just a case of, hey, it looks pretty good. And the glass effect is obviously, is really nice as well. Yeah, I've been hearing some pretty good things about Skate Story, but it has been in development for a really long time. I feel like I've been seeing it on and off, just little clips of it on social media for a really long time. So it'll be interesting to see once this is finally out, and see how it measures up to things like EA's Skate or just classic Tony Hawk's and so on. Because EA Skate is not doing great, so hopefully this one is a little bit better. Sorry. I didn't actually get the release date from that one. It's December, I think. December 7th? 8th. Okay, that was close. Alright, last one is Cuff Bust. We saw a little bit of this at one of the Game Awards. And it had a pretty fun trailer with people trying to escape from prison and stuff like that. So it is kind of a sandbox, bring your friends and have a bit of fun kind of thing, in the same way that like stuff like Phasmophobia and Lethal Company and all that kind of jazz is just like, here's a bunch of friends together doing nonsense, more or less. The gist of the Cuff Bust is you're all in prison, you're all trying to escape prison, and there's various different ways you can do that, various different puzzles you can handle. I don't know if it's like a procedurally generated prison type thing, and like there's just different puzzle encounters you'll encounter, or different activities you'll encounter that require you to get back to the helicopter and so on. Or if you're able to get away a different way, or if you can see there they can take the flying truck somehow. Anyway, but from what I've seen from like gameplay snippets, it does seem like it's a good bit of fun. But again, you're gonna need quite a few friends, because the lobby is quite big. I think it can hold like 20 people in a game, which is a bit insane. Anyway, coming to kind of the second week of October, so we have the first wave of Xbox Game Pass games. So this will be the first Xbox Game Pass wave since the big fuck up, basically, of last week, where they jacked up the price, and a lot of people seem pretty pissed off about that. Anyway, so what's coming here? We have the first three are first party games. It's Team Ninja developing Ninja Gaiden 4, but Microsoft are publishing it because they publish the other Ninja Gaiden games. The Keeper is being made by Double Fine. Double Fine are owned by Microsoft at the moment. Outer Worlds 2 is Obsidian, and Obsidian are also owned by Microsoft. So these are three first-party games. They're exclusive to the new Ultimate tier, which you will remember is now $30 a month, which is insane. If these games are worth $30 or not. Keeper Outer Worlds 2 was going to be an $80 game. And they rode back on that. But yeah, also part of your Ultimate Premium is this AI garbage supermarket simulator. Yeah, so that's good. First game after the three first parties is an AI slop game. That's Microsoft. Anyway, PAX Day, I think PAX Day is like a Civ. Or it's like a 4X thing. I will admit I'm not sure. It's exclusive to PC anyway. It's not on console. The casting of Frank Stone is a supermassive type choose your own adventure, but it's set in the Dead by Daylight series. I don't know enough about the Dead by Daylight story, lore, or whatever, but Frank Stone is somebody. Again, as part of your $30 fucking thing, you have the Grinch Christmas Adventures. We've got AI Slop, licensed fucking game. A game from a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. A game that you can't play probably because it's on PC. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, they're both very good games, but they are also ancient. Also, once again, exclusive to PC. I think these are the enhanced editions, but not clear. I assume it will be the enhanced editions. Evil West is... way to describe Evil West. It's a kind of a close quarters brawler game. And despite it being a cowboy game, you're punching things way more than you might think. It's mostly a melee game with some gunplay every now and then. But it is pretty fun, like cowboys versus vampires kind of thing. I do feel like the difficulty spike near the end is bullshit, but otherwise it's a fun game. Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is a kind of remaster of the original Ninja Gaiden 2. Yes. Also exclusive to Premium. He is coming exclusive to PC. It's a game preview. I think it's an early access thing. He is coming, I think, is a tower defense type game. Though admittedly, I'm not entirely sure. I may be confusing it with a different game. Eternal Strands is actually a really fun sandbox kind of Shadow of the Colossus type thing. But it's very... how to put it? Like, there's a lot of, like, kind of interesting physics systems going on in it, in that your character has access to a sort of telekinesis ability pretty early in the game. And you can use that to, like, cause structural damage to things. Or just pick up a big rock and hurl it at a Shadow of the Colossus, at a Colossus. But on top of that, it does have, like, things like fire propagation. So you can set something on fire, and the fire will carry to things that are meant to be flammable and stuff like that. And it's very much a kind of toy box of tools to use to... no, that would be a toolbox. A toy box of toys, or a toolbox of tools, to use to kind of take down these kind of big enemies. But in between that, it's also an action-adventure type thing. I kind of got a little burnt out on it because it also doesn't really give you a progression quest line kind of thing. It's like, go here to do thing, but how you get there, how you upgrade your kit, you know, I was finding myself in areas where I felt like I shouldn't be here. I'm here too early. You know, my gear isn't leveled up enough for this kind of thing, but also not clear where I go to level it up kind of thing. Could I have just, you know, done a bit of research? Probably, but I didn't. But otherwise, I thought it was a fun game. Ball X Pit, or Bollocks Pit, as I've been calling it. I think it's like a ping pong thing. Or not ping pong. Pinball. The other one. I think it's a type of pinball, but a Devolver Digital kind of thing. Also exclusive to Ultimate. You'll note nothing there is in Standard. And in fact, there aren't many that are just premium either. But Eternal Strange is pretty good. Well, to be fair, it was pretty good. Ninja Gaiden 2 is also a good game. It's also really hard. You know, take that with how you will. He is coming as a PC exclusive. So again, not for consoles. Arguably, which is their bigger market. Anyway, it's a pretty decent first wave, other than the AI slop and the Grinch. Otherwise, those are actually some pretty good games. Whether they still have people to sell that to is debatable, though. Anyway, moving on. The free game over on Epic Game Store this week is Gravity Circuit, which I'm not familiar with. Action-packed 2D platformer of console classics. Lone Operative War Hero, who's definitely not the Shredder, because he really does look like him. Okay, so it's Mega Man. I think it's Mega Man, but you have a grapple. That's what I'm going with. Okay. It actually looks kind of fun. And the last thing I wanted to point out is that Steam Next Fest starts tomorrow, or chances are today by the time you're watching this video. I played some of the games from the last Steam Next Fest, but I didn't showcase any of them on the channel because I was in a bit of a funk. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm still in a bit of a funk, but I am going to try to make an effort to get some of these games shown off. This is the October edition, typically a few more horror games because it's October. And there's some really good games in lined up for the Next Fest demos. If you're not familiar with what Steam Next Fest is, it is effectively a week of free demos for games that haven't launched yet. And it's kind of like a week where they can just showcase a shit ton of games that are coming soon. And some that are miles away, some that are years away from coming out, but you can get a little go at them right now. And typically, or in the spirit of Steam Next Fest, the demo is meant to disappear after the week. You know, so it's meant to be like a 1 week of like intense kind of playtesting of demos and stuff like that. But a lot of games leave their demos up. So just keep bearing in mind, the demo may not still be there the week after. So if it's something you're interested in, give it a look. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Chances are, if the concurrent users on Steam are any indication that you're already playing Battlefield 6. Again, reviews-wise, it seems like EA remembered why Battlefield was fun in the first place. Although I read one review that was like, yeah, it does look like DICE has remembered that, you know, this was the reason people enjoyed Battlefield in the first place kind of thing, but also it feels like they don't want to do that. Like they don't want to stick to the thing that made Battlefield, and they want to open it up to more players and kind of thing. And it does feel like there's like a push and pull there in the game. I don't know, because I can't tell them apart. I can't tell Battlefield and Call of Duty apart. These aren't my kind of games. They're not for me. That's fine. I was watching a live stream of it, and I just felt... I'm sure that a lot of this is old man yells at cloud, but I don't understand how it's fun to die every 2 seconds. And I get that you could just say, get good. But like, people who are good at the game are also dying. Okay, maybe they're dying every 5 seconds instead. But like... I don't know. I don't get how that's enjoyable. Anyway, apparently I'm very much in the minority though. Moving on. Also out this week, Little Nightmares 3. This is again the threequel to Little Nightmares, a game that I think didn't need sequels at all. The first game told I was going to say cohesive story. It didn't really. The story still was. It's largely up to interpretation. And I don't think the games... I think the games kind of share a world, but I'm not sure if they share a storyline exactly. I never finished the second one. And I know the character from the first game does show up in the second game. I didn't get very far into the second game. I think they show up pretty early, actually. Anyway, I really liked the first Little Nightmares. Never finished the second one, as I said. The third one is by a different developer. It's by Supermassive Games, who are, I think, stretching themselves a bit thin, to be honest. I think they're making a few too many games all at once, and it's showing. The original studio is making Reanimal instead, which is also like very Little Nightmares, but a different title. It's curious why that's happening, but here we are. Anyway, I probably will give this a shot at some point. It's full co-op this time around. I think Little Nightmares 2, you had a NPC companion, but it didn't have like a co-op thing. Whereas Little Nightmares 3 seems to be fully playable as a co-op game. Like you can still play the single player and the other character will be an NPC, but it's possible to play with multiple people. Anyway, Little Nightmares 3. For me, the game that I'm actually quite looking forward to is Absalom. So this is by .mu, Guard Crush, and another developer's name I forget. These is effectively the team that made the most recent Streets of Rage game. I think it was Streets of Rage 5. Which was excellent, like a really, really good beat 'em up. And I played a little bit of the demo of this, and it does feel really good to kind of bomb around and beat up enemies and stuff like that. The part I'm not mad about is the roguelike part, because I am burnt out on roguelikes. It's just why I'm giving a little bit of extra time before I jump into Hades 2, because I am still kind of like a bit sick of roguelites, to be honest. But this one has co-op. You can play multiplayer. I'm going to see if a friend of mine will play along with me. And then in that case, it might, the roguelike fatigue may not be as bad. I do like that a lot of the characters play very different. Yes, there was like kind of a difference in the Streets of Rage characters, but in a lot of ways they were very similar. Whereas the Absalom characters are very, very different. And they handle and fight very differently as well. So that's kind of fun. And I also heard that Absalom are getting a like animated show at some point, which I think lends itself pretty well because it does have a bit of a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. Anyway, moving on. Also, we have By Sweet Carol. I've been talking about this game for a little bit because I really like its art direction and art style, and it's kind of a Clock Tower game where you don't get... There aren't many Clock Tower clones, mostly because Clock Tower is a bit of a niche title in the first place. So you're not going to get too many games trying to copy it, but it does have a bit of a Clock Tower vibe to it. But I do really like the art style. It's like really old school animation, like old like Snow White, kind of like really old Disney cartoons. But it's like very horror vibe as well, and those two things don't typically go together, you know? So I think it might be an interesting one. Anyway. Video's taking a while to load. Lost Eidolon's Veil of the Witch might have its lunch eaten by the Final Fantasy Tactics remake. But this is a kind of tactics RPG. In the style of Final Fantasy Tactics and what have you. Again, I played the demo. I liked the demo. I thought it was a good bit of fun. Some questions on whether some of this art is AI or not. I'm not sure. I don't know if they've ever specified that no, it's not AI, guys, or if it's finessed. You know, like they started with AI and then they edited it to make it not look AI. I don't know. I'm throwing that out there. I don't think there's any kind of suggestion that it is or isn't, but the portraits kind of give me that vibe that maybe they are. Anyway, hopefully not, you know, because I thought the demo at least was a lot of fun. Karamara Beneath the Forlorn Limbs. So this is a kind of... It's sort of an old school text-based adventure kind of thing, but obviously not text-based. But the idea would be like old adventure games. You would type in what you wanted to ask about, what you wanted to talk about, and so on. And you'd sort of have to keep track of keywords in the game, either write them down or put them in a notepad or something. And it's sort of trying to redo that kind of game, but instead of you having to keep track of like a notepad of keywords or whatever, you have this sort of deck of things you can talk about and things you can ask about and so on. I think it's an interesting idea, and it's an interesting prospect, and I want to give that a shot. House of Necrosis. So House of Necrosis is turn-based tactical Resident Evil. So it's definitely an old school like survival horror thing, but combat is like turn-based, which is there's another game like it. I forget what it's called now. But it's a similar type of game. I don't know. I'm hoping it's not also a roguelike type thing. I do hope it's just like a coherent story that if you die, you go back to a checkpoint or whatever. Apparently you can cast magic too, which is pretty funny. I didn't know that. Anyway, that's House of Necrosis. Also out this week. Quite a few games launched this week. Last one, again, being October, there's a couple of horror games in there. The Lacerator is kind of an interesting one. I'd be curious if it's actually allowed on Twitch. So the idea with the Lacerator is it is a survival horror type thing, and you are in a you're in like a jigsaw house kind of thing where there's just horrible like traps everywhere, and you're trying to avoid getting lacerated, as the case may be. However, the game kind of does continue if you do happen to lose a limb. The game will just continue that way, and you'll just have to do your best, basically, without an arm or without a leg or missing both legs and stuff like that. But on top of that, it does help you in some ways. Like if you are missing both of your legs, you are able to crawl underneath tables and that kind of thing to hide, that kind of deal. And the reason why I don't think it might be allowed on Twitch is because you can get your dick cut off. You can get your dick cut off, and also your character, I think in the storyline, you're on set to shoot a porno, and shenanigans happen. Anyway, we'll see. Anyway, last one, complete opposite tonal direction, Yooka-Replay-Ly, which is a remake of the original Yooka-Laylee, which was a fun collectathon, not unlike the Banjo-Kazooie games. In fact, that was initially its entire purpose, was to make Banjo-Kazooie, but they didn't own the IP, so they had to make their own Banjo-Kazooie with blackjack and a bat and a weird lizard creature. Anyway, it's still fun. Unfortunately, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games. The video game industry. So, cancelled Assassin's Creed game was set after the Civil War. So this is news coming from Stephen Totolo and GameFile, that Ubisoft were at one point planning to make an Assassin's Creed that would be set after the US Civil War at the time of the Reformation. I don't know what time that time is called. It's not the Reformation, it's something else. But they chickened out. And they chickened out for a really unfortunate and very frustrating reason. So it was set to take place after the Civil War because of the controversy around Yasuke, the Black Samurai in Assassin's Creed Shadows, which hasn't really gone away. And they're kind of saying that coupled with a different reason is why this new entry that was internally like well received, people who are working on it were like really into it, was doing well internally, playtests and stuff like that, but it led to this new entry being scrapped altogether. So the storyline would have seen a former slave protagonist who returns to the South to confront the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. Honestly, that feels pretty good. Anyway, the team seemed pleased with the project. However, it ceased development due to several reasons. Again, the backlash of the Black Samurai. Now, whatever you want to say about how Yasuke is historically should have been, is there, and there was a Black Samurai and what have you, and his name was Yasuke, kind of thing. A former slave protagonist in the US at the time of post-Civil War dealing with the Ku Klux Klan, like they would have to be. Like, I don't think they could say it's not, he couldn't be, like, historically it's not correct, whatever. But on top of that, the political climate of the United States at the time, and we say at the time, it hasn't exactly gotten better. So again, they were afraid of putting the game out because angry gamer shitheads and angry MAGA right-wing US people would say, no, the Ku Klux Klan are the good guys, I guess, was Ubisoft's position. So this project was known as Project Scarlet. There are a couple of Ubisoft games that are in the making. Project Scarlet. There's Hexen, I think. Hexy is one of their other ones. And it was slated to be the next mainline RPG of the franchise, releasing in fiscal year 2028, which would have been the end of 2027. So there is going to be a gap, I guess, for Assassin's Creed games. Was going to be worked on by Scott Phillips, who previously did Syndicate and Odyssey, which are both pretty good Assassin's Creeds. And I think he was involved in Black Flag as well. In a lot of ways, Assassin's Creed kind of follows the Nintendo console way in that, like, the first game's okay, and then the second game is really good, and then the third game wasn't that great, but then the fourth game was really good, and then the fifth game wasn't that great, but the sixth game was really good. In the same way, like, Nintendo consoles kind of flip-flop with the N64 being really good, and the GameCube didn't do that great, and then the Wii did amazing, and the Wii U did shit, and the Switch is doing really, really well, and so on. So yeah, like, Assassin's Creed 1 kind of was the template for the game. And then Assassin's Creed 2 is amazing. Really good game. And I think we can kind of lump all of the Assassin's Creed 2 games together, the trilogy. And Assassin's Creed 3 wasn't amazing, which was the time of the Civil War. No, it wasn't the time of Civil War. It was the time of War of Independence in the US. Then Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag is, of course, like, probably the best one. Pirates and what have you. Assassin's Creed 5 is Assassin's Creed Unity, which is its own fucking joke. And then 6 was Syndicate, which I said was a pretty good one. It's probably the last of the kind of traditional Assassin's Creed games until Mirage. Assassin's Creed Origins, I didn't like, personally. I thought it was a bit meandering and a bit bloated. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I like Odyssey mostly because I kind of just vibe more with Greek classic gods and kind of thing. Valhalla I never played. I don't actually know if Valhalla is a good game or not. And then Mirage, also similarly, not sure if that was a decent one or if it even counts as an Assassin's Creed mainline entry. Shadows, I think, reviewed decently. Anyway, the point here on this article is that it is disappointing that the shithead side of the video game community that I've been talking about, like, a couple of times now, in a number of times even on the show, has scuppered and scared off a developer from making a game. And these guys are all about, censorship, the developers don't want to, they're scared that the woke mob or the woke mafia will come after them for doing certain games or what have you. And no, this is the one that scared them off, because of shitheads saying a black samurai was too far or a woman character was too far. Like, there's a stupid meme going around right now that's like, it's a side-by-side shot of Atsu from Ghost of Yotei, and on one side it is game designed for activists or whatever, and it's just Atsu as she normally appears, and then it's game designed for gamers, and it's a heavily sexualized, like, massive jugs, deep cleavage, doll face kind of thing, and it's like made for gamers. It's like, guys, what the fuck's going on? Gamers are not just gooners. They're spelled differently, not the same thing. They're not just gooners. They didn't say they weren't gooners. They're just not just. There's more to gamers than just gooning. Anyway, there's some pretty funny ones that have been out there afterwards. It's like Eggman, whereas it's like his cartoon version where he's like stick arms and legs, and then he's like a big egg body. And that's at the activist one, and the one that's made for gamers is Eggman, but he's like stupid sexy Flanders kind of thing. Or Spider-Man, where again it's side by side, but the Spider-Man that's for gamers has a huge ass, basically. And Anyway, I don't know. It's really funny, but it's also deeply frustrating that Ubisoft finds that angering that side of one, the gaming community, but also the political climate of the United States. And it's hard to really overstate how large a market for video games the United States is. So it's a bit shit. And you could say, oh, they're just making a calculated economic, financial thing, and they don't want to. Also, we don't want to put our developers in harm's way of having these guys do death threats and all that shit, which they're gonna fucking do anyway. But it's also even more deeply frustrating in that they felt this one was okay, though. So any idea of like angering up the woke mob and that being something Ubisoft cares about or is afraid of is not a thing, because they were totally fine with doing Assassin's Creed Mirage's DLC, which is heavily alleged to be backed by Saudi Arabian money. The public investment firm who just bought, the public investment fund rather, who just bought EA, or are in the process of buying EA kind of thing. So it's reportedly the product of a partnership between the publishers and the Saudi-backed Sabi Games Group. That this will take players to 9th century Al Ula, which is a Saudi Arabian governorate something. It's kind of like, I think it's kind of like what Puerto Rico is to the United States, and that Al Ula is similar to Saudi Arabia. But yeah, Ubisoft has declined to offer any conclusive answers. The company faced criticism and questions over working with the country, both externally and reportedly from staff. Staff were saying that this will tank our reputation. Ubisoft came back to say that the PIF's money, the public investment firm's money, is not Prince Bonesaw's money. And talking with partners who do not share our democratic values does not mean abandoning them. Unless, of course, it means Nazis and fascism. Then we're totally on board with their diplomatic ideals and we'll throw ours in the bin. Sure seems like it's really just money that was motivating them. Anyway, not that I should be surprised, but still frustrating. Speaking of not giving your customers what they actually want, PlayStation quietly cancels remaining PlayStation The Concert 2024 tour dates in the US. So there's an update to this later. We'll get to that in a second. So it has quietly cancelled virtually all its remaining 2025 dates. The PlayStation The Concert is meant to include music from basically all of the games you see here. So stuff from The Last of Us, Horizon, Ghost of Tsushima, and God of War. And more. There's an and more there, and they never elaborated on what the and more was, because PlayStation has quite a history and some really good music, and they sure seem like they only went with like the last generation. And that was it. You know, there's so many things from Japan Studios. Music is incredible. Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, the Ratchet & Clank games have really good music. Siren games have really good music. Like, so many of these they could have picked out, but no, these are the ones you went with. Anyway, it turns out most people had the same opinion of this as I did, which was, why would I want to listen to their music? Like, out of all of them, God of War does have good music, but a lot of that is because God of War had a coherent theme from the PS2 era and the PS2 and PS3, like a ba ba bum bum bum. You know, that's God of War. Can you pick out any from the other three? It's not to say they don't have good music, but like a recognizable song that you can hum and you want to hear. Whereas Mario music, easy. Legend of Zelda music, I know I'm picking out Nintendo here, but like Castlevania, amazing music. Silent Hill, amazing music. All from other developers. And PlayStation decided to go with not like a third-party thing where they could, you know, showcase PlayStation, the environment, the platform, but more specifically PlayStation, the very narrow first-party only, Western only developers. It's just, this is just a microcosm of what's wrong with modern Sony, or modern PlayStation, we'll say. Anyway, the European run seemingly ran into trouble and that a lot of other European ones were cancelled. So Poland, Sweden, Norway, Italy, some of Germany and Budapest were also cancelled as well. There is ticket sales for New Jersey's one in the 11th of November. However, the vast majority of seats remain unsold. At the time of publishing, as you can see here, the blue dots are unsold. Right, so there's a couple of sold in here, so a couple sold back there, but for the most part, no one's buying the tickets to this thing. That clearly nobody wanted. If you had gone back a couple of generations, gone back to like PS1, Wipeout music, again, amazing. I just find that, again, not that this music is bad, it's good music from all 4 of these games, but it's not like recognizable or necessarily music you'd want to hear outside of the game. Whereas there are a great number of video game concerts that do very well with music from games, but it's music people want to hear outside of the game. Anyway, the update was just confirming it, basically. It is with great regret that we have cancelled the PlayStation Concert 2025 tour dates in North America. Our team has spent a considerable amount of time developing this project. We share in the disappointment of fans who will no longer be able to attend. I don't think the disappointment is massive. Anyway, we extend our heartfelt thanks to everyone who supported the show, which was like 4 people, and appreciate your understanding in making this difficult decision. It sure seems like you might have checked if there was appetite for this. If you had elaborated on the and more, I might have, if you told me there'd be like fucking guest Square Enix something or other. Anyway, moving on. Some really bad kind of labor news coming out now. So union members announced legal action against Build a Rocket Boy over layoffs. You may recall Build a Rocket Boy are the Mindseye dev, which is, I think, currently the worst game of 2025. So there's an open letter attributed to 93 employees and ex-employees of Build a Rocket Boy, which is accusing studio's leadership of long-standing disrespect and mistreatment of staff. The open letter is being hosted and co-signed by the IWGB, which is the Independent Workers of Great Britain. The union have commenced legal action over mishandling of redundancies at the company. So keeping in mind that redundancy process in Europe and in the UK is different to the US. You can't just say, lol, you're laid off, have fun. If you're laying off 50 or more people, you have to go through consultation, and you have to go through significant consultation. And Build a Rocket Boy laid off like almost 300 people. So that's a huge amount they would have to go through. And from the sounds of it, they fucking didn't. So yeah, they've got an interesting lawsuit on their hands now. Anyway, the letter is addressed to Build a Rocket Boy's executive leadership specifically, and it accuses them of a lack of transparency and communication, unbearable levels of overtime, and disastrous handling of redundancies. The IWG union are filing multiple legal actions against Barb, Build a Rocket Boy, claiming failure to carry out fair consultation ahead of redundancies, as well as multiple cases of unfair dismissal. There's a report. I can't see what this says. Yes, there was a later report that alleged that around 300 employees had received at-risk of redundancy notices. So this was like a week after Mindseye came out. It was announced that like pretty much the whole studio was being let go. The letter to Build a Rocket Boy's leadership says the layoffs happened because you repeatedly refused to listen to your workforce's years of experience, resulting in one of the worst video game launches this decade. The letter goes on to accuse the studio's leadership of implementing mandatory 8 hours of overtime per week for every single employee. 4 months leading up to Mindseye, they were going to be... Developers working on it were supposed to be given time off in lieu at a rate of 7 hours for every 8 hours they worked. So effectively you'd have only worked 1 hour kind of thing, but you're doing all of the work at the beginning and getting your time off in lieu at the end, and you're not getting it now because you were made redundant. I've always kind of found it telling that the acronym for time off in lieu is TOIL. Should tell you why you should never take it. Anyway, many have still not been able to take this time off due to your continued requests for extra high priority work even after launch. So as people who are like supposed to get this time off and have been crunching like crazy still aren't allowed to actually take that time off. Or not allowed to. They're not being permitted to, shall we say. Anyway, employees have received misinformation. This is about their redundancy policy. So employees have received misinformation being handed dismissal notices with the wrong notice periods, being put in the wrong teams so that their performance was scored by the wrong people. These and other errors have potentially resulted in the wrongful dismissal of dozens of staff members. And I enjoy that lawsuit, boys. Our experience at the company has been one of burnout, job insecurity, health issues, and the failure of a game that many of us have put years of our lives into. Build a Rocket Boy needs to change. CEOs need to take a back seat. Just fucking emblazon that on the entire industry, really, and allow the skilled people who remain at the company to forge the path ahead. It's basically all the people who made the stupid decisions should no longer be making decisions. There. We'll fix the game. But we're not going to get a chance to fix the game because you laid off 300 people. Okay, anyway. So demands made in the letter are a public apology from studio's leadership. I feel like you're more likely to get all of the other things than a public apology, but anyway. Remaining employees that are on redundancy notice to either work their notice period or to take payment take payment in lieu of notice. So stop stringing me along and just pay me, basically. A concerted effort to improve conditions at the company, recognize the IWGB union, so they don't actually recognize the union, which is why they're getting sued, really. Anyway, and then use official external partners to action any further redundancies. So yeah, don't do it all internally because you fucked it up. Anyway, so people who were signing on this thing have remained anonymous, unfortunately, for fear of repercussions. As well as worries about anti-union discrimination when seeking other opportunities, which is kind of the worst part of it, is that they also want to still work in the industry, and the industry, despite the news we come out with of, hey, unions being recognized and so on, there's still a massive discrimination-wise if it's known that you either helped start a union or joined a union or any of those kind of things, that you're just passed over. So, yeah, having to keep yourself anonymous for that is shit, basically, for the video game industry, any industry in general, because hey, it turns out capital is very much against you organizing against them. Who'da thunk? But some people who didn't remain anonymous. So audio engineer Isaac Hudd has to say, in my experience, Build a Rocket Boy has shown little regard for the well-being of its staff. Many fantastic hardworking developers have felt used and discarded, while public statements of care have not matched the reality of working conditions. Pattern of poor decisions from senior management has led to a disappointing launch, ongoing challenges for both players and employees. Having supported many of my colleagues through the recent redundancy process, I have seen how damaging these practices can be. I will continue to speak out until this industry treats its people with the respect they deserve, or just treat them as human beings. We could start there. And then Ben Newborn, who was game analyst, I think, for the studio. The callousness shown by management towards staff at Build a Rocket Boy is truly awful. Even before the disastrous launch of Mindseye, staff had suffered months of crunch, resulting in some horrific mental and even physical illnesses beyond the typical widespread burnout. As kids, lack of sleep will not only affect you mentally, your body will start breaking down too. Studio leadership have chosen not to take responsibility for the game's failure and instead blamed saboteurs, as if individual employees or online influencers could have caused this. The arrogance of leadership to believe that they can act with impunity throughout development and the following redundancies has pushed myself and many former and continuing employees to take a stand. I guess we'll see how that works out for them. Then Spring McParlin Jones, that's a hell of a name, as chair of the union, had to say that the treatment the workers at Build a Rocket Boy have been facing in the past 12 months has been shocking. They have been routinely belittled, cheated, and manipulated by the company they dedicated years of their lives to. Despite this, they were able to keep trust in each other and work together to fight for fair treatment. Citation needed. It's scary to think that 10 years ago, other executives like Leslie Benzies is the ex-GTA guy, and from the sounds of things, there's a reason he's the ex-GTA guy, and Mark Gerhardt could treat their workers like this and face zero repercussions. I'm proud to say that that's not the case anymore. Through the union, these workers have been able to force the executives at Build a Rocket Boy to respect their rights. Citation needed. You are suing them. Let this serve as a notice to other executives like Mark and Leslie. The games industry is not the Wild West anymore. I mean, it is, but you should still try to fight it. But it very much still is the Wild West. Anyway, you don't get to pretend that employment laws don't apply to your company, because if you do, the union will be there to stop you. I mean, US employment laws don't seem to actually apply. Anyway, we'll see what comes of that lawsuit, but there is a longer story coming out. I think Jason Schreier Bloomberg was talking about it, about basically what it was like for those 4 months leading up to Mindseye and why Mindseye has turned out the way it did, and how studio leadership, I mean, stop me if you've heard this before, but studio leadership thinking they knew better and forcing through changes that the rest of the developers are like, this will make the game worse. Like, I think I've heard this song before. Anyway, moving on, because we're continuing with the bad layoff news. So Heart Machine making layoffs and ending development on Hyperlight Breaker. So Hyperlight Breaker, if you're not familiar, is a sort of sequel to Hyperlight Drifter, and it was a kind of multiplayer open world roguelike brawler type thing, and was still in early access, so it won't make it out of early access, basically. So Heart Machine are making layoffs and ending development on early access title Hyperlight Breaker. They did not specify how many people will be made redundant. Hyperlight Breaker launched earlier this year into early access, and from the looks of things, won't be getting out of it. It's currently sitting on a mixed rating. From the sounds of things, it had a strong start, but its mid and end game was just meandering, I think, was kind of the issue with it. Heart Machine, unfortunately, this is not the first time they've laid people off. Heart Machine previously laid off a portion of its workforce at the end of last year, and said at the time that the launch of Hyperlight Breaker would rekindle opportunities for those impacted, which it has quite clearly has not. This time around, it's saying it is forced to cut jobs due to broader forces beyond our control. Now, Heart Machine have worked with Annapurna in the past. Like Solar Ash, I think, is an Annapurna game, and that's also a Heart Machine developed game. And I think what has happened is they've effectively run out of funding, and Annapurna are not picking up Hyperlight Breaker because it's not really their kind of game. And I think there were rumors that they were Microsoft might have picked them up, but I think that's also dropped. So I feel like what's happening here is they're effectively, one, Hyperlight Breaker's not doing great critically, and with the community, people are not enjoying it. As you can see, it's a mixed rating out of 2,500 reviews. Feels like they're cutting their losses here. Anyway, as we wrap up our work on Hyperlight Breaker, we've had to make the difficult decision to part ways with a number of talented team members. This was not our ideal path, but rather the only one available given the circumstances. We don't know, really. Asterisk. While this path will include a conclusion on the project, it reflects broader forces beyond our control, including shifts in funding, corporate consolidation, and the uncertain environment many small studios like us are navigating today. So that's why I'm thinking that Annapurna, Microsoft, Tencent and NetEase stepping back also from Western development. It's possible that they were in talks with some of these partners and that's kind of dried up. Anyway, they will continue to be building video games as smaller core teams, so the studio itself is not shutting down. They have Possessors coming out December at some stage. That is also developed by them. The update is basically to say that they're not just going to stop Hyperlight Breaker like cold turkey. There is an update scheduled for early next year, and then at that point, they'll start winding down the game. So the plan is to polish the game as much as possible before winding down development. We still have something coming in January. We plan to deliver something meaningful and as polished and complete as we can given our current circumstances. We're doing our best to refine what we can, complete key systems, and have the game culminate in a satisfying punctuation point. Given our limited resources, with team members rolling off the project, we won't be releasing any more updates or Q&As even for the rest of this year. So they're head down trying to make the game as good as they can make it and then bid farewell to it effectively. So yeah, that's not great. We're continuing with the bad news, I'm afraid. Metal Hellsinger studio The Outsiders has been shut down as part of Funcom's recent layoffs. So this is news from last week, or maybe the week before, that Funcom we currently have Dune Awakening, which is doing pretty well for them, had laid off a number of staff, which had not been specified. It also had not been specified what projects that it affected. But it does seem like one of those projects is Metal Hellsinger Studio, the Outsiders, who made the Doom, but also a rhythm game. Doom, but also a rhythm game. So the founder of the studio, David Goldfarb, had to say that I have not had much time to process the news, but all of us at the Outsiders and Funcom Stockholm have been affected by the layoffs at Funcom, and our 10-year-old studio will be closing. Many of us had survived a near-death studio experience years back when Darkborn was cancelled, and because of the team's loyalty and refusal to quit, Metal Hellsinger was born. It will always be a high point for me personally. I'll be forever grateful we got to make it, and for the wonderful team and partnership that made it happen. He did say the team will attempt to try and continue in some new form, whether that's a case of them reforming as a different studio, or forming a team in an already established studio or something like that. But they might go the way of the ZeniMax Online guys. So former ZeniMax Online devs form Sackbird Studios. So these are the developers who would have been laid off as part of Microsoft's big layoff stint. These are the people who are working on Project Blackbird, which is going to be by the studio that makes Elder Scrolls Online. And from the sounds of it, it was going to be like a parkour MMO kind of thing. Which obviously was cancelled along with Perfect Dark, Everwild, and something. Something else that I can't remember. Anyway, so the studio is still pretty small. It's under 10 people. These are 10 people who all worked on Elder Scrolls Online and obviously worked on Project Blackbird as well. So coming from their new CEO, Lee Ridout, we're grateful for our time at ZeniMax Online Studios. It shaped us as developers and as people. When I learned that Blackbird was being cancelled and a lot of people were losing their jobs, it lit a fire. We realized the best way to protect our craft, again, stop me if you heard this before, was to create a studio where creative independence isn't negotiable. CEOs need to take a back seat, etc. After years in AAA, this is from the COO, David Worley. After years in AAA, we wanted the freedom to take smart risks without waiting for a green light or chasing quarterly targets. We're fully employee owned and funded, which means we only answer to people who are passionate about games. Now, again, hopefully this works out for them. We have heard of studios forming, ex AAA devs and so on who partnered up with Tencent or partnered up with Embracer or partnered up with wherever, and then the studio disappeared, and they're saying they're fully owned, self-funded and so on. So is Remedy, but Remedy itself is also facing issues because of FCC Firebreak. And actually, I don't think Remedy are self-funded anymore. Are they public now? I feel like they are. Anyway, I did like that they're called Sackbird though, because it's like they got... Because obviously it's Project Blackbird, but they got the sack, which is a slang that may not make it over to the US, but getting the sack is getting laid off, basically. So Sackbird Studios is kind of, I don't know, it's a good name for them. Anyway, what's happening in the community? Nintendo are being shit, is what's happening in the community. So this is an article by John Walker, who's a bit of a curmudgeon like me. But anyway, Nintendo demands $4.5 million from Switch piracy Reddit mod. So this article is mostly talking about how Nintendo only seems to go after people who can't actually pay them. And then the question being, why are they only going after people who can't pay them? And then also, if we are locking people into a position where the punishment for their crime is to be in debt for the rest of their lives, that seems like it's a bit harsher than like if they had killed somebody. It's and what we're talking about here is copying a video game. Seems a bit extreme. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of this article. Anyway, Nintendo is continuing to pursue its attempts to take down members of a Switch piracy Reddit, specifically the subreddit's moderator, Archbox, James Williams. And then kind of why we're not like fully on the side of the moderator here, because he was given an opportunity to stop. You know, he had been given a cease and desist a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, possibly. Nintendo says that he ignored it. And then when he was supposed to show up in court, he did not show up in court. And now Nintendo are requesting $4.5 million in a default ruling. Where did they get that number from? It's a good question. It's a good. Somebody should ask them. Anyway. So yeah, has it ever like demanded the millions of dollars from people who could actually pay? Nintendo would be making like a shit ton of money, but they don't. They only demand it from people who have no possibility of ever paying it. Modded Hardware's Ryan Daly, $2 million that he doesn't have and can't give them. Gary Bowser's probably the more famous one, $10 million. He went to prison for it. He has literally no way of getting that money back to them, but he is in debt to them for effectively forever, really. There was also attempts to get some money from Jess Keegan, $7.5 million. I don't think that one actually went through, but if it had, they don't have that kind of money. On the other hand, sticking your fingers in your ears and hoping it'll all go away is not exactly a great legal response. So yeah, like the guy Archbox, like you really fucked yourself over here. But at the same time, 4.5 million is a ridiculous number to somehow get to. And a lot of this goes back to the early 2000s, Napster, LimeWire, music executives trying to claim that a single downloaded track was a lost sale. And then just taking the lost sale number that they claim to have lost and then multiplying it by how many times it was downloaded. And that is our losses, which is bullshit. Not everybody who downloaded it was ever going to buy it in the first place. And on top of that, particularly with Nintendo ROMs, you don't fucking sell those games anymore. There's no way for people to buy them. Or if you do sell them, you sell them for way too much money. More than they're actually worth. Anyway, the idea that piracy costs a company significant losses is always stated as fact, but is never asked to be proven or evidence, because a lot of these things get settled. Courts frequently take it on face value that any downloaded ROM must automatically represent a lost sale, which of course it does not. There are a great many ROMs that are out of print. You have no way of actually buying them. And in the first place, not everybody who downloads a ROM was actually going to buy the game. Not everybody who downloads a film, pirates a film, was ever going to actually pay for the DVD, because the DVD or the Blu-ray is extortionate amounts of money. But yeah, tracking it back to rulings in the early 2000s in which individuals were made bankrupt with ludicrous damages because their kids downloaded some stuff. And this also led into the idea of just because you have an IP doesn't mean that actual person downloaded that kind of thing, but the courts were always on the side of music executives. Anyway. There's a kind of funny quote here from Nintendo saying that they've suffered damages because of these breaches, decreased profits, loss of profits because they reproduced something that Nintendo weren't distributing anymore. But okay, but kind of funnier is that distribution of Nintendo Switch games are related to users whose accounts Nintendo of America has terminated for violations of the ULIT. They're saying deleting the accounts has caused Nintendo damage. A thing you entirely and voluntarily within your power to have not done. You could have not done that and not damaged your company. Anyway, find it extraordinary to declare that there has been harm to the livelihoods of specific employees without providing any evidence at all. So they're talking about here how it's damaging their developers, their artists, game designers, and so on, because they rely on Nintendo selling games to receive their salary without actually proving that like their salary has gone down or people haven't gotten their pay or anything like that. They never. There's nothing in the default ruling request to evidence any of it. And also, how much money does Nintendo make? It's especially unpleasant at a time when we're seeing companies reporting massive profits while sacking thousands of staff, making a mockery of the entire concept. Now, from what we know, like, Nintendo does have turnover, but it's like, it's not as egregious as fucking Microsoft's like 10,000 layoffs kind of thing. But still, the idea that you are making money hand over fist and a guy copying a couple of ROMs is gonna make it so that you can't pay your developers. No? Anyway. Kind of interesting one is also part of the default ruling request, is that they're saying that Archbox was encouraging piracy, and that encouraging piracy is an even more egregious than the piracy itself, somehow. Even though, pretty sure that's just speech. And this is Nintendo of America we're talking about, so that's free speech. Which... yeah, is somewhat under fire at the moment. Anyway, but of course, in order to actually fight this issue and being able to just say that's just speech, I'm allowed to encourage piracy. You know, it's not illegal to say, "Hey, go pirate something." It might be illegal to go and do that, but it's not illegal to say it. But this would require that Williams be able to actually afford a legal defense and, you know, bring this argument up, which obviously they cannot against fucking Nintendo, because he is a subreddit mod for Nintendo ROMs. Unlikely he's drowning in money. So the filing breaks down how Williams has promoted free pirating shops, given people information on how to circumvent anti-piracy measures. Again, that's not illegal. Once you buy something, you own it. It is your product. It is your item. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. And exchanging access for donations of eShop cards, which is probably where they're going to get him, because he tried to make money off of this. I do find it funny, though, in that he was asking for donations of eShop cards, which is the Nintendo eShop, which means Nintendo would get that money. So in a roundabout way, Nintendo were being paid for their ROMs, even though it came through piracy. Now, I don't know if you're able to cash out eShop funds. I don't know if that's a thing. I've never tried. I assume you can't. I assume it's like all of the shops that have their own wallets and stuff, that once it's in there forever. Because I don't think anyone's ever challenged them on it. And then a case of like, how do they get that kind of money? The amount of money sufficient to remedy North of America's injury would be extremely difficult to quantify, but it is indisputable that such amounts would be large. If you can't quantify it, how do you know? How do you know it would be large? Anyway, therefore, the money at stake by this motion is nowhere near an amount that would compensate Nintendo of North America. How do you know? You just said it. You just said you haven't quantified it. For the seriousness of the defendant's conduct. No, look, no, it isn't. Somebody downloading games that you don't even fucking publish anymore, have no interest in publishing anymore, and who had no intention of buying it in the first place, has not lost you $4.5 million. It just hasn't. Anyway, Archibald Williams seems like a fool, allegedly leading figure in an action known to be against the law, who has taken a chance to get out of the situation and refused to take it. Like, yeah, like, you shot yourself in the foot here, guy. And however, if we're taking this as a crime, the whole point of the criminal justice system is that, yes, you are found guilty of the crime, but you are meant to be able to atone for it. You're meant to be able to be rehabilitated. You're meant to be able to, like, pay your debt to society or whatever. And if we're in a position where the punishment, the sentencing for this crime is you're in debt to us forever and ever and ever. We don't even do that for murder. Anyway, a way to make amends is an essential part of the judicial system. Criminals are supposed to be able to pay their debt to society. Rehabilitation should be central to their consequences. However, financial debt of the magnitude Nintendo demands from individuals is obviously impossible to ever pay back and means a permanent, lifelong punishment for the crime, which is not something we're supposed to have in the justice system. A fair justice system, we should say. So again, he's bringing up Gary Bowser here, who is effectively having his wages garnished for the rest of his life. It's like 25 to 30% to make back $10 million. He went to prison for that, which means once he gets out of prison, he's going to find it difficult to get a job again because people don't hire felons. Not felons, sorry, just convicts. It wasn't a federal crime. Prison obviously will make it far harder for him to get well compensated employment once he's out, so he cannot pay back his debt. We've made it a case where he's not able to be rehabilitated because he can't pay back the debt. This is debtor's prison. We got rid of this shit in like the 20s. We were supposed to have gotten rid of this shit, shall we say, in the 20s. And Nintendo's like, nah, debtor's prison. Let's bring it back. Anyway, as long as courts allow one download to equal one lost sale, this will always continue because they're able to say, hey, we sell our games for $80 now. So if you download like 10 games, fuck you. $800. And obviously we're talking about millions of downloads here at an $80 game. There's no fucking way you're ever paying back that money. At some point, you just got to say, Nintendo's not getting the money back. But that hasn't happened. Anyway, we'll leave... Well, I guess Battlefield is the big game this week, so I guess we'll leave that, even though I have no real interest in it. Anyway, that was your news, the 6th to the 12th of October, 2025. Again, as I said, not a massive amount updates-wise, or new game announcements or stuff like that. Mina the Hollow are being delayed to an indeterminate time, rather. It's disappointing, sure, but like there's hundreds of games on my backlog that I have, thousands maybe at this point, that I could get to at some point ever if all of the games didn't keep coming out. A lot of new releases as well. Obviously, we're looking at Battlefield 6 here, but I'm not super interested in it myself. I would like to play Absalom because I think that will be a lot of fun. But again, I'm a little not happy about the roguelite element to the game. Because I do feel that, like, some games do it well. Hades, obviously, do the roguelike thing really well. Dark Souls kind of has a roguelike element to it. But I do feel some games are like, here's a game that ordinarily would be like 4 hours long, and now we've made it like 40-something hours long because of the roguelike stuff. And I do kind of feel that that's just... I'd rather play the 4-hour game, to be honest. Anyway, industry bullshit stuff, like Ubisoft being scared to make an anti-fascist game, anti-slavery, anti-racism game, but totally okay with making a Saudi Arabia-backed DLC thing. Make of that what you will. Sony having to cancel its concert thing, I just kind of felt like, why did you pick those games? I mean, I know why, because modern Sony is up its own ass with their prestige games, but did nobody say, hey, maybe the music from these games isn't the draw you think it is? Anyway, I said that when they announced the concert in the first place. Stuff going on, Build a Rocket Boy is not exactly surprising. But if they're able to get like a union-backed lawsuit going, like, one, it'll probably be the end of the studio, but hopefully it will be like a, hey, stop fucking around with your developers. At least in the UK, I feel like the US employment law is so non-existent that they'll probably still get away with it there. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how that works out for them. And the Nintendo being Nintendo, they never get called out on it. The courts always side with them. You know, why would they stop when they always win? Why would they stop? Anyway, that's it from me. Have a good rest of your day, or whatever it is you're doing. Steam Next Fest next week. Keep an eye out for some fun demos and that kind of thing. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.